The Sanford Junior High School Chorus will now sing Ballad of the Green Berets. Will be given by Joe Doran.
Almighty Creator, we are gathered here to pay tribute to 10 men from Sanford and Springvale that were lost during the Vietnam War. They were U.S. Army Specialist Grade 4, David H. Alexander, U.S. Air Force Major Robert L. Baker, U.S. Army Private First Class William R. Batchelor, U.S. Marine Corporal John H. Cash, U.S. Army Private First Class Paul L. Sear, U.S. Marine Corporal Richard P. Glaup, U.S. Navy Seaman Kenneth C. Lockwood, U.S. Army Specialist Grade 4, Leo A. Longtang. U.S. Army Chief Warrant Officer, Michael R. Pickles. And U.S. Air Force Cadet, Morris A. Shepard. Today we are gathered here to give recognition for all that they gave to us and their country. Help us to be ever mindful of all that we have because of their ultimate sacrifice. It is your strength that enables us to protect others. It is your providence that keeps us safe. Help us to turn our hearts towards you each and every day. Amen.
presentation of the colors by SHS students who are members of the Massabesic High School Junior Naval Reserve Officer Training Corps. Please stand. You are invited to join the chorus in singing the Star-Spangled Banner as it is played by the band. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the Carl J. Lamb School 4th grade class.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bonita Pothier from Senator King's office will read a message from Senator King.
Good morning. Before I read Senator King's message, I just have to say that to hear the Ballad of the Green Berets and the Sounds of Silence, two incredibly powerful songs from my era when I was in junior high school and high school, and to have those memories come flooding back about the Vietnam War, those from my community who served, the draft, those who died in action, you, all of you who participated in creating this special ceremony this morning, I have to thank you. It is very powerful to have those memories come flashing back as though they happened yesterday. That's history. It's a history that precedes you, but it's a history that informs you and that has left its mark in your community and has created the context of who you are. It is so powerful to hear the work that you have done here, to see you doing this, to know that you are remembering something so powerful and so special. Thank you. From Senator King, who I know if he was here would be equally moved, his letter, "Dear friends, it is with great appreciation that I join with you today to remember the Vietnam War and those who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our nation at that time. You have spent several months researching the history and learning the stories of Sanford citizens who served in Vietnam. You may be too young to know the turmoil and struggle of that era firsthand, yet your efforts to learn of our country's history and those who have worked to ensure that our freedom and values continue is vitally important. Sanford's 10 fallen service members may have been relatives, friends, or even classmates of members of your own family. For those who knew them, their lives are remembered forever. Your work has allowed all of us to know about them, to learn of their sacrifice, and to join their families in honoring and in thanking them. You have given voice to history by recognizing these individuals, and particularly by creating a special musical piece that memorializes them. I commend you for your hard work and extend my gratitude to all of you. Again, thank you for allowing me to join with you in this moment of recognition and for taking the time to remember and honor your community's tradition of service. Sincerely, Angus King.
As we studied the Vietnam War, we discussed the memorial to the soldiers in Washington, D.C. There is a picture of it between their banners over there, and it is a wall. It is a black wall that is shiny. It contains the names of everyone who died in that war. Names are still being added as they find remains and identify them. People visit the wall and they leave remembrances there, which are collected and saved by the National Park Service. We hope to take our compositions there that we wrote for each of our soldiers and leave them at the wall in their memory. The piece we're going to play is called Reflections from the Wall. And reflections means two things. Literally, the reflection of the people walking by the wall, but also reflections upon the composer's visit to the wall. We hope that you will enjoy us as we walk upon the wall. So at first it's very soft. You can't see the wall when you first arrive at it, as it sits down in purposely. And then as you come upon the wall, it's almost overwhelming. And then as you walk the wall and see all those names, it just hits you where you live. So this piece is Reflections from the Wall. Each of the members of the 8th grade band, sometimes by themselves or sometimes with a partner or two, wrote a song honoring one of Sanford's fallen from the Vietnam War. We read as much biographical information as we could get. We read their postings on the wall, and we looked at pictures that we could find to inspire these songs. The first soldier that we're going to honor is Kenneth Lockwood. We sort of adopted him because he married a local girl. So although he was not originally from Sanford, he became a part of Sanford and is buried here in Sanford. When Abby Graffam started her piece, she was inspired by his wedding picture. And she thought it was going to be a very light, happy piece about his wedding and the joy he felt at his wedding, and that is how it starts. But then the realization that soon after that he went to war and did not return is what inspired the ending of her song. Here is Abby Graffam with Soldier Gone Down. One thing that we were all taken aback by was how all of these soldiers started here in Sanford just as normal kids like the ones in the audience, that they had friends that they would play together in the neighborhood, because this was, of course, before cell phones and video games. Some of them raised pigeons. Some of them had specific games that they enjoyed playing. And then it was sort of sad to think, if you look at their faces, how young they were when they died. So Aaron's piece, in honor of John Harold Cash Jr., is called Childhood of a Fallen Veteran.
up and look down before you call him a man.
Our guest speaker today is Lauren Fink. She is a Sanford High School senior who will be attending Wheaton College this fall. Lauren's talk today is on the interview she had with Commander Alan Carpenter last fall. Some of you may recognize his name. For those that do not, Commander Carpenter is a Sanford native, a Sanford High School graduate. He married his high school sweetheart. He was a Navy pilot and a former POW in North Vietnam. Miss Lauren Fink.
I had the pleasure of meeting with and interviewing Commander Alan Carpenter and learning about the devastating reality that is the life of a prisoner of war. Mr. Carpenter suffered in a prisoner of war camp for 6 years and 3 months. During this time, he missed the beginning years of his children's lives. Despite this, he recalls the worst years of his life with a strong emotional exterior and a proud perspective on his time with the military. In addition to the physical injuries he is still dealing with, he displays these outstanding qualities. The following is only a few clips from my interview with him, and only a small portion of his inspiring story.
Circled around the Springville Square in front of Nassau College. There was one person in the back that hollered out, "Baby killer." And wasn't easy to take. I played the baritone horn, not very well, but I played it. And after Korea, the POW release in Korea, there was one main POW that came back. He was from Bar Mills, and the band went over there to celebrate his return, and I remembered that quite vividly at the time. So I was looking at this to be something on the same order. Well, it turned out to be a much bigger deal. There were, I don't know how many people were there, but there were a lot of people, and we traveled a long way in the back of the convertible, and most of that issue of the Sanford Tribune was about my coming home and all, so it was kind of mind-blowing to find myself suddenly in the spotlight, whereas not long before that I'd been kicked around, spit at, and so forth. It's a different world, and the ability to fly is just fantastic because it takes a lot of money to be able to fly. And so for a poor little country boy from Sanford, Maine, to go out there and somebody pay me what I thought was outrageous amount of money to go expend outrageous sums of money flying and blowing things up and so forth, it was just fantastic. It was great. And after I got out of the Navy, I bought my own airplanes. I got into flying ultralights. And I built my own airplanes. I built airplanes that fly at 30 miles an hour, and I built airplanes that would fly at over 200 miles an hour. I did aerial photography. I did training, instruction, took people out for rides commercially, did all that. And it was great sport. I've been scared flying a time or two. Probably more flying my own plane than flying a Navy plane. It's a job, and you're so highly trained that you go through all the motions. I once had an instructor tell me, when you take a cat shot, you know, we're up there and the carrier's steaming at 30 knots through the sea, and the bow may be going up and down. And they launch you off, and there's nobody in the airplane but you. And he said, you know, we're so highly trained we could go after, often there could be somebody behind you beating over the head with a clipboard or a flashlight and screaming in your ear, and you would still just automatically rotate, lift the gear, accelerate, lift the flaps, turn out, and go out to the rendezvous circle and join up and pay no attention to what's happening. That's training. And that applies to pilots, and it applies to Navy SEALs, any specialized people who are doing something that requires a lot of training. You get so much training, you just do it. I experienced about as much pain as I think it's possible to experience. When I ejected, I was doing, the airspeed indicator was coming up past 550 knots when I pulled the curtain and ejected. That's over 600 miles an hour. As soon as I hit the airstream, I started flailing. You can't help it. I was holding onto a curtain here and had an oxygen mask on, helmet, everything. But immediately the wind catches one elbow and out it goes. And then the wind catches the other elbow and out it goes. And now your arms are doing this. Your legs have started doing the same thing. As you're slowing down, you don't slow down very fast from 600 miles an hour. I severely dislocated and broke both shoulders, severely. Fear of the unknown is the greatest fear of all. And I can say that without any hesitation. When the guards would come with the keys and you could hear them rattling the keys, and you didn't know whether they're going to open the door to your cell or somebody else's. If it was somebody else's, because if it was other than food time or bath time, they took, a bath is not what you're thinking. When they came at an odd time to take us away, it was probably going to be to do something we didn't want to do, and very likely going to involve physical pain. So just the jingle of keys, psychologically, and then you hear your door lock open. You don't know what, if there's two of you in the cell, you don't know which one it's going to be, or both. Or there could be, I lived in one cell with 65 guys. You don't know who it's going to be. You know that your family loves you and supports you and believes in what you're doing. Lacking that, you'll just wither up and die. You know, man in the generic has to have a purpose, and that purpose is to fit into the society and do well for the society. As soon as it narrows down into being totally selfish, we lose something, and ultimately we can lose the organism. Yeah, we can be very proud of the people who volunteer to serve this country, because the pay isn't all that great. You have to put up with a lot of crap, and mostly you get the satisfaction of knowing you've done the right thing, and hopefully it's going to help your country.
It is stories like Alan Carpenter's that motivate me to write journalism. I will forever remember the impact his stories had on me. The Vietnam War was a controversial time for the American people, often leading there to be negative opinions towards the war and towards those who fought in it. Despite whether our men felt the war was worth fighting for, they fought. They, like Alan Carpenter, gave many years and efforts into defending our country without wavering their faith in it. This war should never be forgotten by our youth. The men who fought, and these men from Sanford, and many more who gave their lives, should be forever remembered. They deserve to be recognized. We are taught a basic understanding of the Vietnam War in school, but we are never taught the direct stories from veterans that grew up in our own town. We are never told the true stories of what these soldiers went through and what they gave up their lives for. We only know the numbers, not the magnitude, and not the understanding that these men are not just a number. I am thankful to all of these men, and specifically to Alan Carpenter, for giving me this opportunity. The opportunity to learn the reality I never truly understood. Thank you all.
The junior high chorus will now sing A Bridge Over Troubled Waters.
Like a bridge
If you cannot visit the Vietnam Wall in person, you can visit it online. You can visit the virtual wall, and people leave comments and remembrances there as well. Jasmine wrote her piece about Michael Richard Pickles. If you get a chance to visit his site on the virtual wall, you will see tribute after tribute to his bravery as a helicopter pilot. This message was left there by his sister. Mike was my hero. He died doing what he always wanted to do, which was to be an outstanding helicopter pilot. Apparently, he was a lot of other people's hero as well. One of his greatest loves was doing rescue work to support our soldiers in the field. He would fly into situations to rescue the wounded or stranded that many would feel was too risky to try. He was funny and smart and kind. He did an amazing job as a helicopter pilot and saved many lives. I have seen postings on the web that described him as highly skilled and fearless. He received 2 Purple Hearts, 3 Air Medals, and the Bronze Star. He was killed in action while piloting his helicopter. He was trying to capture an enemy soldier that had escaped from custody. He was on his 2nd tour of duty in Vietnam. She goes on to say, Mom and I miss you and think of you every day. Dad is with you, as is an important part of our lives. Jasmine was inspired by his service as a helicopter pilot, and as you listen to her piece, you'll hear the whirl of the helicopter. Jasmine Susie. Sometimes a lot of kismet goes into one of these projects. When I was looking for the grave of John Harold Cash Jr. on Saturday, because he is buried in my hometown, I couldn't find him. They're very hard to find. And just then a gentleman who worked for the company who puts monuments in the cemetery pulled up and said, "Can I help you?" And when I explained what I was doing and that I was representing my students, he grabbed 2 other people and searched until we located him. The same for William Robert Batchelder. We didn't have a lot of information about him, and we knew somewhere there was a picture from the Sanford Journal of his memorial service and funeral here in Sanford. And it turns out that our secretary, Elaine Blanchard's brother, was singing in the choir that day, and her mom had saved a picture. Moved again by William Robert Batchelder's childhood and then such a sad ending, we end our student composition today with a flute trio called Lost Childhood by Matthew Merrifield, Maddie Roy, and Olivia Martin.
Joe Doran will pay tribute to the brothers Private First Class Ralph Baker and Major Robert Baker.
Before I start talking about the Baker brothers, I'd just like to mention two things in our research that we came across that it's a little interesting. When David Alexander was buried, he's in the center right in the green banner over there. When his funeral was being held in Sanford, there were two guys from Sanford who were in the military that were home on leave that weekend, and they were asked to be pallbearers for David's funeral. And if you take a look to your right, you see David Alexander, Leo Lamontagne, and Mike Pickles. They were both pallbearers for David Alexander. The other thing that I wanted to mention was Morris Shepard. He had a lot of high school friends here, and the day of his funeral and after the funeral, a number of them got into their car, went up to the lake, opened a bottle of beer, and they toasted him up around Mousom Lake. And one of them spoke up, and this is a true story, spoke and said, "Morris, if you're here with us, give us a sign." The minute he said that, a branch fell out of the tree right in front of the car. And they believed that Morris was there with them. A little over a year and a half ago, we received a phone call from Dad Brott from Washington, D.C. He was looking for a photo of Major Robert Baker. Dan is a researcher for the U.S. Army at Arlington National Cemetery and helps with the Vietnam virtual wall. The name of Robert Baker did not sound familiar to us, and nowhere in our research did we come across that name from Sanford, who was lost in Vietnam. Dan said he had been looking for family members of the Major, but was running into empty leads. We were surprised to learn when he told us that the Major is buried in Oakdale Cemetery. We located the Major's military marker, and were very surprised again to find another military marker within inches of his that read, Private First Class Ralph Baker, who was lost in the Korean War. At that time, we were preparing for the Korean War ceremony. With a little research, we found out that Private First Class Baker was from Lebanon. At that point, we decided to adopt him, even though he wasn't from Sanford, but buried here, as we did with Lieutenant Walter McAlone for our World War II ceremony. Where we didn't have a photograph of PFC Baker, we photoshopped his name on a military white cross and ordered his banner. As luck would have it, about 10 months ago, a check came across my desk for memorial pavers to be placed in the Southern Maine Veterans Memorial Cemetery in Springvale to honor brothers Robert and Ralph Baker. The name on the check was Sylvia Cable, their sister. After spending a year and a half looking for a family member, Mrs. Cable has been living 200 yards from my house. With photos made available of Major Robert Baker, he is on the Vietnam virtual wall now. There's a similar website for the Korean War veterans, and Private First Class Ralph Baker's image is now presented on that wall. As you can see off to my right, each Baker Brothers banner has an insert of their sibling in the lower right-hand side of their photo. And the last two photos on the right and the freestanding one. Ralph was lost in Korea on February 7th, 1953 at the age of 27, and Robert was lost on November 27th, 1970 at the age of 40. Robert joined the Air Force as an enlisted man. Through hard work, he gained a commission and as a second lieutenant became a navigator. On November 27, 1970, he flew his last mission. His C-123 was evacuating approximately 80 Vietnamese civilians and a flight crew of 6 Americans out of Nha Trang Air Base in Vietnam. The crash site was located on December 24th, 1970, almost a month after it happened. It was apparent that no one could have survived. The flight took off in very bad weather, and they had to have been flying IFR with instruments and followed by radar. The C-130 crashed into a side of a mountain, and there's 2 ways that could have happened, and possibly 3. But where the weather was bad, it was probably two reasons why it crashed. One was that the altimeter, which is the instrument that gives you how high the plane is flying, and as a navigator, he had to know how high he had to be to go over hills and mountains. The altimeter could have been given to him wrong, and to the co-pilot, rather, who entered it into the altimeter, or the altimeter was faulty. Enemy fire, I don't think, brought it down because of the weather situation, and it could have been another possible problem with it as well. But where he was so low, it tends to be an altimeter problem. Years later, they were able to remove the remains at the crash site. That was, and they were fully loaded with fuel at the time, so the remains were pretty much charred. It wasn't until the perfection of the DNA testing that Robert's remains were identified. They had been shipped 2 years after, 1972 approximately, and they were verified that they were actually his remains when the DNA testing was perfected about 10 years ago, and their siblings, Sylvia, DNA matched Robert's. Today we honor all those men who were lost in Vietnam, especially the 10 from Sanford and Springvale. We will be requesting Robert's file from the Joint POW-MIA Accounting Command for his family, so that we have the complete record of them removing the remains from the crash site and identifying it until they return the remains in approximately 1972. We were very fortunate to be able to find their grave sites and give it the information to Washington, and it has been our pleasure to meet Mrs. Cable and obtain the story, and we're still piecing it together today. Thank you very much.
Please stand for the presentation of the American flag by the U.S. Army Honor Guard. Mrs. Sylvia Cable, a sister of Ralph and Robert Baker, will be receiving the flag on behalf of all those who were lost during the Vietnam War. Please remain standing for the benediction, which will be given by Joe Doran.
Lord, we come to you proclaiming that you are all-powerful and all-loving. You are our tower of strength. You are our ever-present help in times of trouble. We come to you with thankful hearts for all the blessings you have given our country. Our hearts are also filled with thankfulness to those who served our country and those who gave their ultimate sacrifice in the armed forces. Their love of country and for our people is inspiring. Father, we are reminded that our soldiers that come home fight many personal battles, and we ask that today you will intervene in their lives and help each one individually. Amen.
That will conclude our Fallen Veterans Ceremony. Thank you all for coming.